Yuki opened his eyes slowly. His head felt heavy like someone had filled it with rocks. The last thing he remembered was the bright flash of light that came from the sky during his patrol mission. Now he was lying on a cold metal floor in a room he had never seen before. The walls around him glowed with a soft blue light. They seemed to breathe like they were alive. The air smelled strange, too. It reminded him of the smell after lightning strikes during a thunderstorm. Yuki tried to sit up, but his body felt weak and shaky. He looked down at himself and noticed his military uniform was gone. Instead, he wore a plain gray outfit that felt smooth against his skin. But his dog tags were still around his neck. The small metal pieces felt warm against his chest. Someone had forgotten to take them off. Yuki stood up carefully and walked to what looked like a clear wall. When he touched it, his hand met something solid, but he could see through it perfectly. It was like touching invisible glass. Beyond the wall, he could see a long hallway with more glowing walls. Strange creatures moved through the hallway. They were much taller than humans and very thin. Their skin looked almost see-through like water. Yuki could see dark shapes moving under their skin that might have been blood vessels or something else. Their eyes were the most shocking part. They were huge and had many different surfaces like the eyes of insects, but much bigger. The creatures moved in a way that seemed too perfect. Every step was exactly the same length. Every movement was smooth and planned. They reminded Yuki of robots more than living things. None of them looked at him as they passed by his cell. From the cell next to his came a familiar voice. "Yuki, are you awake?" He turned and saw Dr. Hana in a cell just like his own. She was a scientist who worked with the Earth Defense Corps. She had been on the same mission when the strange lights appeared. Her black hair was messy, and she looked tired, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "Where are we?" Yuki asked. "I think we are on some kind of ship." Hana whispered. "I have been awake for a few hours. These creatures have been watching us through devices. They seem very interested in how we look and act." Yuki pressed his face against the clear wall to get a better look at the hallway. The creatures continued to walk past without paying attention to the humans. Some of them carried strange objects that glowed with different colors. Others had what looked like small screens floating in front of them. "What do they want with us?" he asked. "I think they are studying us like we are animals in a zoo," Hana said. "They have taken samples of our hair and skin while we were unconscious. I can see small marks on my arms where they used some kind of tools." Yuki checked his own arms and found similar small marks. They did not hurt, but they proved that the creatures had been examining them carefully. Hours passed as they watched their captors. The creatures seemed to work in shifts. New ones would come and replace the others at regular times. They all looked very similar, but Yuki started to notice small differences. Some were slightly taller. Others had different colors under their transparent skin. The most important discovery came when one of the creatures stopped near their cells. It was carrying a device that made soft beeping sounds. The creature touched something on the device, and suddenly, Yuki could understand what it was saying. "The specimens appear to be recovering from the transport process," the creature said to another one. "Their brain activity shows normal patterns for their species." Yuki felt his heart start beating faster. They could understand what the aliens were saying. This might be their only chance to learn what was happening to them. "Have you completed the physical analysis?" asked the second creature. "Yes. They are typical examples of their species, average size and health. Their technology level appears to be several centuries behind our own. They should provide useful data for the research project." "Good. The High Council is eager to begin the next phase. These creatures may look harmless, but our long-range studies suggest they could become a problem if left alone." The two creatures moved away, and Yuki could no longer hear their conversation. But he had heard enough to feel scared. The aliens did not see humans as intelligent beings. They saw them as specimens for research. Even worse, they thought humans might become some kind of problem. "Did you hear that?" he whispered to Hana. "Every word," she replied. "They have been studying Earth from far away. They think we might be dangerous somehow." "Dangerous?" Yuki almost laughed. "We can barely travel to our own moon. How could we be dangerous to creatures who can travel between stars? I do not know, Hana said. But I do not think they brought us here just to study us. I think they are planning something bigger. As if to prove her point, more creatures appeared in the hallway. These ones looked different from the others. They wore what might have been uniforms and moved with more purpose. One of them stopped directly in front of Yuki's cell and stared at him with those huge insect-like eyes. The creature made sounds that the translation device picked up. So this is what they look like up close. Hard to believe such primitive beings could pose any real threat. Still, the computer models are clear. If we allow them to continue developing, they will eventually become a problem for galactic stability. What do you recommend? Asked another uniformed creature. The same thing we have done with other problematic species. Complete removal before they can spread beyond their home world. It is cleaner that way. Yuki felt like ice water had been poured into his stomach. Complete removal. They were talking about wiping out all of humanity. The aliens were not just studying humans. They were planning to kill everyone on Earth. The uniformed creatures moved away, continuing their conversation in voices too low for the translation device to pick up. But Yuki had heard enough. He looked at Hana and saw the same fear and understanding in her eyes. They were not prisoners of war. They were not even really prisoners. They were the last witnesses to their species. Soon these aliens would travel to Earth and destroy everyone and everything humans had ever built, unless somehow two people trapped in alien cells could find a way to stop them. The blue lights on the walls seemed to pulse faster now, like a heartbeat. Or maybe that was just Yuki's own heart beating as he realized the impossible task in front of them. Somehow they had to escape from the most advanced beings in the galaxy. They had to steal alien technology they did not understand. They had to travel across space to warn Earth. They had to do all of this before the aliens finished their planning and launched their attack on humanity. The odds seemed impossible. But as Yuki looked at his dog tags glinting in the alien light, he remembered why he had become a soldier. Sometimes impossible odds were the only ones worth fighting. The next morning brought new horrors that Yuki could never have imagined. The translation device that had been left near their cells continued to work. This mistake would prove to be the most important error the aliens ever made. A group of the tall creatures gathered in the large room across from the human cells. They arranged themselves in a perfect circle around a glowing table that showed moving pictures. Yuki pressed his face against the clear wall to see better. The pictures looked like Earth from space. One alien stepped forward from the circle. This one was taller than the others and had golden lines running under its transparent skin. When it spoke, the translation device picked up every word clearly. I am High Researcher Kale, and I call this Strategic Assessment Council to order. The tall alien said. We are here to discuss the final solution for the human problem. Yuki felt his blood turn cold. Final solution. Those words carried terrible weight even when spoken by an alien voice. Dr. Hana moved closer to her cell wall so she could hear better. Her scientific mind was already working to understand what they were about to learn. Our study of the human species is now complete, Kyle continued. What we have discovered is deeply troubling. These creatures show signs that no other species has ever displayed. Another alien stepped forward. This one had silver lines under its skin instead of gold. Please explain, High Researcher. Humans advanced their technology at an incredible speed, Kale said. In just 100 of their years, they went from simple flying machines to traveling in space. Most species take thousands of years to make such progress. The alien with silver lines nodded. This matches our long-distance observations, but surely their primitive nature limits how dangerous they can become. That is where you are wrong, Engineer Mira. Kale replied. Humans do not follow normal patterns of development. They create solutions that should not work but somehow do. They take impossible situations and find ways to survive. We call this adaptive chaos. Yuki did not fully understand what adaptive chaos meant, but it sounded like something that scared the aliens. He watched as the glowing table showed more pictures of Earth. Cities full of people who had no idea death was coming for them from the stars. Show us the threat assessment, said a third alien with blue lines under its skin. The pictures on the Table changed to show human soldiers fighting in wars throughout history. The aliens watched as humans used everything from simple rocks to nuclear weapons. They saw people fighting even when victory seemed impossible. Observe how they behave when threatened, Kale said. Other species surrender when defeat is certain. Humans fight harder. They create new weapons during battle. They sacrifice themselves to save others. This behavior cannot be predicted by our computer models. Engineer Mira stepped closer to the table. Surely their primitive weapons cannot threaten our fleet. Their current weapons cannot hurt us, Kyle agreed. But given time, they will develop new ones. Our computer simulations show that in 500 years, humans could have technology equal to our own. In 1,000 years, they might surpass us. A room fell silent as the aliens considered this information. Yuki could hardly believe what he was hearing. These advanced beings were afraid of humanity. Not afraid of what humans were now, but afraid of what they might become. There is also the expansion problem, Kale continued. Humans reproduce quickly and spread to new areas whenever possible. Our models show they will eventually try to colonize other worlds. If they succeed, they will compete with us for resources. The alien with blue lines spoke up. What is your recommendation, High Researcher? Complete sterilization of their planet, Kale said without emotion. We must eliminate the species before they become a threat to galactic stability. Dr. Hana made a small gasping sound. Yuki looked at her and saw tears running down her face. Complete sterilization meant killing every person on Earth. Men, women, and children would all die because aliens were afraid of human potential. Engineer Mira activated new controls on the glowing table. The pictures changed to show massive alien ships floating in space. I have prepared 3 different elimination scenarios, she said. The first scenario showed alien ships spreading a green cloud over Earth. Biological warfare, Mira explained. We can create diseases that only affect humans. The entire population would die within 60 days. This method is clean and leaves the planet suitable for other uses. Yuki felt sick to his stomach. The aliens talked about murdering billions of people like they were discussing how to clean a dirty room. The second scenario showed bright beams of light striking Earth from space. Energy bombardment, Mira continued. Our ships can destroy all major population centers in one coordinated attack. Any survivors would die from radiation within weeks. The third scenario was the most terrible of all. It showed massive rocks being dropped on Earth from space. Kinetic bombardment, Mira said. We throw large asteroids at their planet until the surface becomes uninhabitable. This ensures no possibility of survival. Which method do you recommend? Asked Kale. The biological approach is most efficient, Mira replied. It requires the least energy and leaves the planet intact. We have already developed several diseases that target human DNA specifically. Yuki wanted to scream or cry or somehow strike back at these monsters. But all he could do was listen as they planned the death of his entire species, with the same calm tone his grandmother used when planning dinner. How long until we can begin the elimination process? Kyle asked. Our weapons are ready now, Mira answered. We need only your order to begin spreading the biological agents in Earth atmosphere. Wait, said the alien with blue lines. Our observations show humans have some space travel capability. What if some escape the planet before we can eliminate them all? Kale touched the table controls and new pictures appeared. These showed human space stations and moon bases. Their space presence is minimal and easily destroyed. We will eliminate their orbital facilities first, then proceed with planetary sterilization. The council meeting continued for another hour. The aliens discussed details of their attack plans while 2 humans listened from their cells just meters away. They talked about timing and coordination. They argued about which human cities to destroy first. They calculated how many ships would be needed for complete success. Through it all, Yuki and Dr. Hana could only watch and listen in horror. The aliens were not evil in the way humans understood evil. They showed no anger or hatred toward humanity. To them, wiping out an entire species was just a practical solution to a potential problem. When the meeting finally ended, The aliens filed out of the room in their perfect, orderly way. The glowing table went dark, and the translation device fell. Silent, Yuki and Hana stared at each other across the space between their cells. They had just learned that their species was doomed. The most advanced beings in the galaxy had decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to live, but they had also learned something else. The aliens feared human unpredictability and adaptive thinking. They were afraid of the very qualities that made humans different from every other species they had encountered. Maybe that fear could become a weapon. 3 days passed since Yuki and Dr. Hana learned about the alien plan to destroy humanity. During those long hours, they pretended to be defeated prisoners while secretly planning their escape. The aliens continued to ignore them, thinking the humans were too primitive to pose any real threat. This was exactly the kind of mistake that would prove fatal to the alien species. Yuki studied every detail of his cell during the day and evening hours. The clear walls seemed impossible to break, but he noticed they flickered slightly every 12 hours. Dr. Hana had been watching the same pattern from her cell. The energy barrier resets itself on a schedule, she whispered during one of the quiet periods when no aliens were nearby. For exactly 30 seconds, the power drops to almost nothing. Can we break through during those 30 seconds? Yuki asked. Not with our bare hands, Hana replied. But maybe we do not need to break through. Maybe we can trick the system instead. This was the beginning of what would become the most important plan in human history. Yuki had been examining his dog tags every day since waking up on the alien ship. The small pieces of metal seemed ordinary, but they were made of a special alloy that conducted electricity very well. Military dog tags were designed to survive extreme conditions, including electrical storms. What if we could create an electrical surge right when the barrier resets? He suggested to Hana. Her eyes lit up with understanding. The system would think there was a malfunction and shut down completely to protect itself. But they needed more than just dog tags to create the right kind of electrical surge. They needed other conductive materials and a way to focus the energy at exactly the right moment. The answer came from the most unexpected source. The aliens had been so confident in their cell design that they included small comfort items for their prisoners. There were soft sleeping mats that contained thin metal wires for warmth. There were water dispensers with metal components. Even the gray clothing they wore had metal threads woven into the fabric. Yuki began carefully removing these metal pieces during the hours when the aliens were not watching. He used his fingernails and teeth to strip away tiny wires and threads. Each piece was smaller than a grain of rice, but together they might be enough. Dr. Hana worked on the timing problem. She had been counting the seconds between barrier resets and noticed the pattern was always exactly the same. The aliens loved precision, and this love of perfect timing would become their weakness. I can predict exactly when the next reset will happen, she told Yuki. But we will only get one chance. If we fail, the aliens will know we are planning something. Then we better not fail, Yuki replied. On the 4th day, they were ready. Yuki had collected enough metal pieces to create a crude but effective conductor. Hana had figured out the exact timing they would need. Most importantly, they had observed that the guard rotation left their cell area completely empty for 15 minutes every day, during what the aliens called their efficiency evaluation period. The moment came just after the alien version of noon. The corridor outside their cells emptied as the guards moved to other parts of the ship. Yuki and Hana prepared for their escape attempt. Remember? Hana whispered. We have to move fast once the barriers go down. The system will try to restart itself within 2 minutes. Yuki wrapped the collection of metal pieces around his dog tags, creating a device that looked like nothing more than tangled scraps. But when the electrical barrier reset and dropped to minimum power, his improvised conductor would channel and amplify the small amount of energy into a much larger surge. The seconds ticked by with painful slowness. Yuki positioned himself right next to the barrier wall, holding his makeshift device. Hana counted down from 10 using hand signals. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yuki pressed his device against the barrier wall just as the reset began. For a moment, nothing happened. Then electricity crackled through the metal pieces and into the barrier system. Sparks flew in all directions as the alien technology overloaded. The clear wall flickered once, twice, and then disappeared completely. It worked. Hana gasped as her own barrier failed at the same time. They had perhaps 90 seconds before the aliens would notice the system malfunction. Yuki grabbed the translation device that had been left near their cells. They would need it to understand alien conversations and hopefully alien computer systems. The corridor outside was exactly as they had observed during their days of watching. Blue glowing walls stretched in both directions with several doorways, leading to other parts of the ship. They had memorized the layout as best they could, but now they were seeing it from outside their cells for the first time. "Which way?" Yuki asked. "The communication center should be toward the front of the ship," Hana replied. "But first we need to find out more about their plans." They chose the left corridor and moved as quietly as possible. The alien ship was much larger than it looked from inside their cells. Rooms branched off in every direction and strange machinery hummed behind closed doorways. The first major discovery came when they found what looked like a control room filled with glowing screens. The screens showed star maps and what appeared to be fleet movements. Dozens of alien ships were moving through space toward a familiar blue and green planet. Earth. Hana whispered. The invasion fleet was already on its way. According to the alien displays, they would arrive in less than 2 weeks. Yuki felt his heart sink as he realized how little time they had left. But then Dr. Hana made an even more important discovery. "Look at this," she said, pointing to another screen. "These are communication logs between this ship and the invasion fleet." The translation device worked on the alien text as well as spoken words. What they read made both humans realize their situation was even more desperate than they had thought. The invasion fleet was not just planning to destroy Earth. They were planning to destroy every human colony and space station first. The aliens had been watching human expansion into space and knew about the moon bases and orbital platforms that most Earth governments kept secret. "They are going to kill everyone," Yuki said. "Not just people on Earth, but every human in space, too." "Unless we stop them," Hana replied. The sound of alien voices echoed from somewhere nearby. Their escape had been discovered and the search was beginning. Yuki and Hana had to make a choice quickly. They could try to find an escape pod and flee the ship hoping to reach Earth before the invasion fleet arrived, or they could go deeper into the alien vessel and try to sabotage it from the inside. "What do you think?" Yuki asked. Dr. Hana looked at the star maps showing the massive alien fleet heading toward their home world. Even if they escaped and reached Earth, they would never be able to convince world leaders to believe their story in time to mount a defense. "We stay," she said. "This ship is connected to the invasion fleet through their communication system. If we can sabotage it from here, we might be able to damage the entire operation." It was a desperate plan with almost no chance of success. But it was the only plan that might save humanity. The voices were getting closer as alien search teams spread through the ship. Yuki and Hana moved deeper into the vessel, carrying only the translation device and their determination to save their species. Behind them, alarms began to sound as the aliens realized their prisoners had not just escaped, but were loose somewhere inside their most advanced warship. The alien search teams moved through their ship with the same mechanical precision they used for everything else. This turned out to be another critical mistake. Yuki and Dr. Hana could predict exactly where the searchers would look because aliens always followed the most logical patterns. Humans, however, did not think like aliens at all. While the search teams checked every normal hiding place, Yuki and Hana squeezed into maintenance spaces that were too small for the tall alien bodies. They crawled through ventilation systems designed for automated cleaning robots. They hid in storage areas filled with spare parts that the aliens never expected anyone to disturb. "They are searching like computers," Hana whispered as they moved through a narrow shaft between decks. "They check every space in order, but they cannot imagine we might think differently than they do." The shaft led them to a part of the ship they had never seen before. When they emerged from the maintenance area, they found themselves in what could only be called the aliens' true control center. Unlike the simple room with glowing screens, this chamber contained the ship's most important systems, and it contained something far more valuable than either human had dared to hope for. "Yuki, look at this," Hana called softly from across the room. She was standing in front of a massive display that showed information flowing between their ship and dozens of others. But this was not just communication between ships in the invasion fleet. This display showed the aliens' complete intelligence network throughout the entire galaxy. The translation device worked over time as streams of alien text appeared and disappeared on the screen. What they learned in those first few minutes changed everything they thought they knew about the aliens and their plans for humanity. "They have been watching us for 50 years, Hana said, reading from the scrolling text. "Every major human achievement, every new technology, every military development. They know everything about us. The files contained detailed maps of every human city. They had population counts for every major settlement on Earth. They knew the location of every military base, every government facility, every space launch site. The aliens had been preparing for this invasion longer than most humans had been alive. But as Yuki studied the information more carefully, he began to notice something that gave him hope. Their intelligence is detailed, but it is also old, he said. Look at these population numbers. They think Tokyo has 12 million people, but it actually has 15 million now. They think we have 3 moon bases, but we actually have 7. Dr. Hana understood immediately what this meant. They have been watching from far away for so long they do not have current information. Their data is accurate but outdated. This was the first piece of good news they had found since being captured. The aliens were working with incomplete intelligence. Their invasion plans were based on information that was several years out of date. But the next discovery was even more important. Hidden in the deepest files of the alien database were records of other species the aliens had encountered throughout their history. Page after page of information about civilizations that had been eliminated before they could become threats. Look at this pattern, Hana said as she scrolled through the records. Every species they destroyed was eliminated the same way. The aliens studied them, observed them, and then attacked when the target species was completely unprepared. None of them fought back, Yuki added, reading over her shoulder. Every single species was caught by surprise. They never had a chance to defend themselves. The aliens had become overconfident through centuries of easy victories. They expected the same pattern with humanity. Complete surprise followed by total victory. They had never faced a species that knew they were coming. "We need to copy all of this information," Yuki said. "If we can get it back to Earth, our military leaders will know exactly how the aliens think and plan." Dr. Hana was already working on the problem. The alien computer system was designed for their multifaceted eyes and strange way of thinking, but her scientific training helped her understand the basic logic. After several failed attempts, she found a way to download the complete database onto a small storage device she found in the control room. While she worked, Yuki studied the star maps showing the invasion fleet movements. What he saw made his blood run cold. The main fleet was indeed heading for Earth, but that was only part of the aliens' plan. Smaller groups of ships were moving toward every known human outpost in space. The moon bases would be destroyed first. Then the orbital stations around Earth would be eliminated. Finally, the planet itself would be sterilized. But there was something else in the fleet movements that caught his attention. "Hana, look at this," he called. "The invasion ships are not all traveling together. They are spread out across space in small groups." She paused her downloading to look at the display he was indicating. "That is strange. Why would they split up their forces?" "I think it is because they are afraid of being detected," Yuki replied. "A single large fleet might be spotted by our space monitoring systems, but small groups of ships would be much harder to see. This gave them both an idea that could change everything." The aliens were so confident in their plan that they had not considered what would happen if humanity was warned in advance. All of their strategy depended on complete surprise. If that surprise was lost, their scattered fleet would become a weakness instead of a strength. "We need to do more than just steal their information," Hana said with growing excitement. "We need to turn their own communication system against them." Yuki understood what she was suggesting. Send false information to the invasion fleet. Exactly. If we can make them think their surprise has been discovered, they might change their plans. Or better yet, if we can confuse their coordination, they might attack at the wrong times or in the wrong places. The plan was incredibly dangerous. They would have to access the aliens' most secure communication systems. They would have to create false messages that seemed real enough to fool advanced alien computers, and they would have to do it all while search teams hunted for them throughout the ship. But it was also the first plan they had found that might actually save humanity. "How do we start?" Yuki asked. Dr. Hana finished downloading the alien database and turned her attention to the communication controls. "First, we figure out how their system works. Then we create some very convincing lies." Behind them, the sound of searching aliens grew louder as the hunt for the escaped prisoners continued. But Yuki and Hana were no longer thinking like prisoners. They were thinking like saboteurs. The aliens had made the classic mistake of underestimating human creativity. They had assumed that even if the humans escaped, they would only try to flee or hide. The idea that two primitive creatures might actually attempt to sabotage one of the most advanced starships in the galaxy had never occurred to them. It was about to become the most expensive mistake in alien history. Working together in the control center, Yuki and Dr. Hana began to plan the downfall of an entire invasion fleet. They had alien technology, they barely understood alien information. They were only beginning to process and alien enemies who would kill them instantly if they were discovered. But they also had something the aliens had never encountered before. They had human determination backed into a corner with nothing left to lose except the entire future of their species. As the search teams moved closer to the control center, two humans prepared to attempt the impossible. They were about to try to save their entire species using nothing but their wits, and the aliens' own technology against them. The next few hours would determine whether humanity survived to see another day or joined the long list of extinct species in the alien database. Time was running out, and everything depended on two people who had never asked to carry the weight of their entire world's survival. Dr. Hana had always believed that knowledge was power. Now she was about to prove that belief in the most dramatic way possible. With her fingers moving across alien controls that she barely understood, she began to access the deepest levels of their communication system. "I think I can send messages to their fleet," she told Yuki as streams of alien text flowed across the displays. "But we need to make sure they believe whatever we tell them." Yuki studied the stolen database they had downloaded. Buried in thousands of files about human civilization, he found exactly what they needed. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a section about Earth military communications. "They have been intercepting our radio signals for years. They know how our governments and military leaders communicate with each other." "Perfect," Hana replied. "If we can make it look like Earth has detected their invasion fleet, they will think their surprise attack has failed." But creating convincing, fake messages was more complicated than either human had expected. The alien communication system required specific authorization codes for every transmission. Without the right codes, their messages would be rejected before reaching the invasion fleet. The answer came from an unexpected source. As they worked frantically at the alien controls, the search teams finally reached their section of the ship. Yuki heard the sound of approaching footsteps and knew they had very little time left. But instead of panicking, he realized the searchers might actually help them solve their authorization problem. "Hide behind that console," he whispered to Hana. "When the aliens come in here, I'm going to try something crazy." Two alien searchers entered the control center, moving with their typical mechanical precision. They began checking each workstation, systematically looking for any sign of the escaped humans. What they found instead was Yuki standing calmly in front of the main communication display. "Surprised to see me?" he asked in English, knowing they could not understand him without the translation device. The aliens reacted exactly as he had hoped they would. Instead of immediately attacking or calling for help, they moved closer to examine this strange behavior. In their experience, other species always tried to hide when cornered. The idea that a human would reveal himself voluntarily did not fit their behavioral models. This moment of confusion was all Yuki needed. While the aliens studied him with their huge, multifaceted eyes, he carefully observed their reaction to his presence near the communication controls. One of them immediately moved to a specific console and entered what had to be an emergency authorization code. The alien was trying to lock down the communication system to prevent the human from sending any messages. But by doing so, it had revealed the exact code sequence that Yuki and Hana needed to send their own transmissions. "Thank you," Yuki said politely, just before the alien security system activated and knocked him unconscious with some kind of stunning energy beam. When he woke up 30 minutes later, he was back in his cell. The aliens had repaired the barrier system and posted additional guards to prevent another escape. But they had made another critical error. They had returned Dr. Hana to her cell as well, but they had not found the translation device or the downloaded database. She had managed to hide both items in the control center before being captured. More importantly, she had memorized the authorization code that the alien searcher had used. "Did you see the code sequence?" Yuki whispered when the guards moved out of hearing range. "Every digit," Hana replied, "and I know where the nearest communication terminal is located. We just need another way out of these cells." This time they did not need to rely on electrical surges or metal scraps. During their time in the control center, Hana had learned something crucial about the alien ship systems. Everything was connected to everything else through their central computer network. "Watch this," she said as she began tapping on her cell wall in a specific pattern. The tapping was not random. She was using a code based on the alien computer language she had observed in the control center. The cell walls contained sensors that reported prisoner status to the main computer. By tapping in the right sequence, she could send false information directly to the ship computer. After several minutes of careful tapping, both cell barriers flickered and shut down. "How did you do that?" Yuki asked in amazement. "I convinced the computer that we both died from a medical emergency," Hana explained. "The safety protocols automatically opened our cells to allow medical teams to remove our bodies. They had perhaps 10 minutes before the computer realized no medical team was responding and reactivated the security systems. This time they had to reach the communication terminal and send their false messages before being caught again. Moving through the ship was easier now because they understood how the aliens thought. The search teams had already checked the route to the nearest communication terminal, so they would not search there again for several hours. The aliens' love of systematic procedures had become predictable. The communication terminal was located in a small room filled with displays showing messages flowing between their ship and the invasion fleet. Hana immediately began entering the authorization code she had memorized while Yuki watched for approaching guards. "I am in," she announced. "Now what should we tell them?" They had discussed this during their time back in the cells. The key was to create confusion without making the aliens suspicious that their communication system had been compromised. The first message appeared to come from the lead invasion ship to all other vessels in the fleet. "Earth monitoring stations have detected our approach," it read in perfect alien text. "Recommend immediate acceleration to backup attack positions." The backup positions were real locations from the alien database, but they were scattered across a much wider area of space. If the fleet moved to these positions, they would be spread too thin to coordinate an effective attack. The second message was even more clever. It appeared to come from the aliens' homeworld and contained updated intelligence about human space defenses. According to this message, humans had secretly built dozens of armed satellites around Earth that could threaten alien ships. Of course, no such satellites existed, but the aliens would have no way to verify this information until they reached Earth. By then, their invasion plans would already be disrupted. "Send one more," Yuki suggested. "Make them think we have new weapons they do not know about." Hana created a third message reporting that human scientists had developed some kind of energy shield technology that could protect cities from orbital bombardment. The message included technical details copied from human science fiction movies that the aliens had been monitoring for years. To alien minds that took everything literally, these fictional technologies would seem like real threats that needed to be countered. "Done," Hana said as the last message went out to the invasion fleet. "Now we just have to hope they believe what we told them." They did not have to wait long for results. Within minutes, messages began flooding back from ships throughout the invasion fleet. Some commanders were requesting additional weapons to deal with the reported human satellites. Others wanted permission to change their attack routes to avoid the fictional defense systems. Most importantly, several ships were already beginning to move toward the backup positions. The careful coordination of the invasion was falling apart as individual commanders reacted to the false intelligence. "It is working," Yuki said as they watched the alien fleet movements change on the displays. They are scattering across space instead of staying together. But their success created a new problem. The increased communication traffic had attracted attention from the ship's security systems. Alarms were beginning to sound as the aliens realized someone was using their communication terminals without authorization. "We need to get out of here," Hana warned. They were preparing to leave when the displays showed something that stopped them both in their tracks. A new message had arrived from High Researcher Kale himself. Instead of falling for their deception, he had figured out what was really happening. "All ships ignore previous communications," the message read. "Our communication system has been compromised by the human specimens. Maintain original attack positions and prepare for immediate planetary sterilization upon arrival." Their plan had been discovered. Even worse, Kyle was ordering the fleet to begin their attack the moment they reached Earth without waiting for the systematic elimination of human space assets. "We made them angry," Yuki said grimly. "No," Hana replied. "We made them desperate. And desperate enemies make mistakes." She was already working at the communication terminal, again accessing systems they had not tried before. If sending false messages to the fleet was not enough, then they would have to try something much more dangerous. "What are you doing?" Yuki asked. "If we cannot fool them with lies," she said, "then we will have to stop them with the truth." Dr. Hana began broadcasting on all frequencies used by human space monitoring stations. Her message was simple and direct. The aliens were coming to destroy humanity, and Earth had less than 2 weeks to prepare. By the time security forces reached the communication room, both humans had sent everything they knew about the alien invasion to every human installation in space. Moon bases, orbital platforms, and deep space monitoring stations would all receive the warning. More importantly, they had transmitted the complete alien database, including detailed information about alien technology weaknesses and battle tactics. The invasion fleet might still reach Earth, but they would not find humanity defenseless and unprepared. As alien guards surrounded them with stunning weapons, Yuki and Dr. Hana smiled at each other. They had accomplished something that should have been impossible. They had turned the aliens' greatest advantage, their superior technology and careful planning, into weaknesses that could be exploited. Now it was up to the rest of humanity to prove that the aliens had been right to fear human adaptive chaos and determination. High Researcher Kale stood in the center of his ship command room, staring at displays that showed his carefully planned invasion falling apart in real time. For the first time in his long life, he was experiencing something that no member of his species had felt for thousands of years: fear. The 2 human specimens that his people had dismissed as primitive creatures had done the impossible. They had not only escaped from the most secure prison his species had ever designed, but had turned his own technology against him. Even worse, they had demonstrated the exact qualities that made humans so dangerous: unpredictability, adaptability, and a refusal to surrender even when facing certain defeat. "Status report," Kyle demanded as his bridge crew worked frantically at their control stations. 40% of our invasion fleet has moved to the backup positions," Engineer Mira reported. "They are now spread across 17 different star systems. Coordination for a simultaneous attack is no longer possible." "What about the human warning signals?" Kyle asked. "Confirmed transmission to all human space installations," came the reply. "Their defensive preparations have already begun. Our surprise advantage has been completely eliminated." Kale felt something that might have been admiration if he had been capable of such emotions. The humans had achieved in days what should have taken years of planning and resources. They had used his own overconfidence and systematic thinking against him, but the battle was not over yet. "Order all available ships to converge on Earth immediately," he commanded. "We will proceed with direct planetary bombardment. Even if they are prepared, we still have superior technology and numbers." This decision would prove to be the final mistake in a long series of errors. As the alien fleet began moving toward Earth, the humans were indeed preparing. But they were not preparing in the way the aliens expected. Instead of building traditional defenses, humans were doing what they had always done best. They were adapting. The alien database that Dr. Hana had transmitted to human space installations contained detailed information about alien technology, including its weaknesses. Human engineers and scientists worked around the clock to develop countermeasures using materials and methods the aliens had never encountered. When the first alien scouts reached Earth orbit, they found something that shocked them to their core. This planet was surrounded by a cloud of small, fast-moving objects that their sensors could not properly identify. These objects moved in patterns that defied prediction, swarming like insects around the approaching alien ships. "What are those things?" demanded the lead scout commander. Back on Earth, the answer would have made humans smile with pride. The objects were modified commercial satellites equipped with simple but effective weapons. Instead of building expensive military platforms, humans had converted thousands of communication satellites, television broadcasters, and weather monitoring stations into defensive weapons. Each satellite carried basic explosive charges and simple guidance systems. Individually, they posed little threat to advanced alien ships, but there were thousands of them and they moved according to human logic that the aliens could not understand. When the scout ships tried to destroy the satellite swarm, they discovered another unpleasant surprise. The satellites were equipped with the human invention the aliens feared most: adaptive chaos. Instead of following predictable flight patterns, each satellite responded to threats in different ways. Some accelerated toward attacking ships, others split apart into smaller pieces. Still others simply changed direction in ways that made no mathematical sense. The alien weapon systems had been designed to target predictable enemies. They could not cope with thousands of small objects all behaving differently, and all refusing to follow logical patterns. "We are losing ships to primitive explosive devices," reported the scout commander with something approaching panic in his voice. But the satellite swarm was only the first surprise waiting for the invasion fleet. As more alien ships reached Earth orbit, they encountered human space stations that had been converted into weapons platforms. These stations did not use advanced energy weapons or sophisticated missile systems. Instead, they used something much simpler and more effective. They used human creativity. One station had been converted into a massive railgun that fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Another had been equipped with industrial lasers normally used for manufacturing. A third station used nothing more than rockets filled with ball bearings, creating clouds of high-speed debris that could shred alien hull armor. Each defensive platform was different because each had been built by different groups of humans working independently. There was no central plan and no systematic approach. The aliens found themselves facing dozens of unique threats that required dozens of different countermeasures. "This is impossible," Engineer Mira reported to High Researcher Kale. "Every human defensive system works differently. We cannot develop a single strategy to defeat them all." "Then we destroy them all individually," Kale replied. "Proceed with planetary bombardment immediately." But even this proved more difficult than expected. The humans had not just prepared defenses in space. They had also prepared for the possibility that the aliens might reach the surface. Cities around the world had been evacuated to underground. Shelters built in the few days since receiving the warning from Yuki and Dr. Hana. When alien energy beams struck major population centers, they found empty streets and abandoned buildings. The humans they were trying to kill had simply disappeared underground, leaving the aliens to waste their weapons on empty targets. More frustrating for the aliens, human military forces had also scattered into small independent groups that attacked using guerrilla tactics. Instead of facing organized armies that could be defeated in conventional battles, the aliens found themselves fighting thousands of small units that struck without warning and disappeared before they could be destroyed. "They are not fighting like any species we have ever encountered," reported ground commander after ground commander. "They do not follow standard military doctrine. Every engagement is different." High Researcher Kale realized too late that his species had made a fundamental error. They had assumed that humans would fight like other intelligent species they had defeated. They had expected organized resistance that could be systematically crushed. Instead, they had found the one type of enemy their logical, systematic approach could not handle, an enemy that refused to be logical or systematic. The final blow came when human engineers succeeded in reverse engineering alien technology using the database information. Within weeks of the invasion beginning, human weapons appeared that could actually damage alien ships. These weapons were not sophisticated or elegant. They were crude adaptations of alien technology combined with human materials and human thinking. But they worked because they did something alien engineers would never have attempted. They sacrificed efficiency for unpredictability. Human missile might use 3 times as much energy as necessary to destroy a target, but it would do so in a way that alien defensive systems could not anticipate or counter. As his invasion fleet suffered losses that mounted daily, High Researcher Kale finally understood why his species had been right to fear humanity. It was not human technology that made them dangerous. It was human nature itself. Order full withdrawal, he commanded in defeat. We cannot win this war. What about the specimens we captured? Engineer Mira asked. Kyle looked toward the detention area where Yuki and Dr. Hana remained in their cells. The 2 humans who had started the chain of events that led his defeat. The primitive creatures who had proven that intelligence and adaptability were more powerful than advanced technology. Release them, he said quietly. They have earned their freedom. 6 months later, Yuki and Dr. Hana stood on the observation deck of the first human starship built using captured alien technology. Through viewing window, they could see Earth growing smaller as they departed on humanity. First interstellar exploration mission. Do you think they will ever try to attack us again? Hana asked. I doubt it, Yuki replied. We proved that humans cannot be defeated by conventional methods. Any species that tries to destroy us will have to be prepared for things they never expected. Behind them, the ship crew worked at control stations that combined human intuition with alien precision. It was a combination that was already producing technology more advanced than anything either species had achieved alone. The aliens had tried to eliminate humanity because they feared what humans might become if allowed to develop freely. Their attack had achieved the opposite result. It had accelerated human development by centuries and spread human influence throughout the galaxy much faster than would have happened naturally. As their ship jumped to faster than light speed heading toward distant stars that would soon host human colonies, Yuki and Dr. Hana smiled at the greatest irony of all. The aliens had been absolutely right to fear human potential. They had just been too late to do anything about it. Humanity was now a spacefaring civilization armed with technology that combined the best of human creativity with alien engineering. More importantly, they had learned that the qualities that made them different from other species were also the qualities that made them impossible to defeat. The universe was about to discover what humans were truly capable of. We,